Good morning. I'm Ernie Withers, Mercedes-Benz of Sarasota. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Public Policy and Small Business Division of the Manatee Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to remind everyone at this time to please silence your phones. So we'll get started here in a second. And before we get started, I'd like to ask everyone to stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Besides our speaker today, there's several other elected officials in the audience today. And if you please stand and be recognized. Jim Boyd, Florida State Representative. Jim, good morning. Michael Bennett, Supervisor of Elections. Michael. Betsy Benek, Manatee County Commissioner. Betsy, good morning. David Watchdog Minor, School Board of Manatee County. David. I don't see the watchdog. Okay. Danny Cacciauti. He's Mayaca City Fire Chief, so I got that right, so I could get that pronounced correctly. Tom Souza, West Manatee Fire District Chief. So we'd like to thank each and every one of you for your continued public service to the community. We really appreciate all that you do, so thank you so much. Our sponsors for today's event are Kaiser University and the Mosaic Company, and we really appreciate you guys for hosting this series. We do appreciate your ongoing support and enable us to bring these important events to our members and guests, so we want to thank you so much for that. So I'm honored to introduce our newly appointed CFO, Jimmy Patronis. CFO Patronis is a native Floridian. His public service career began with experience as an intern in the Florida Senate and the United Kingdom's House of Commons. Following graduation from Florida State University, Governor Lawton Childs appointed him to Florida Elections Commissions, and Governor Jeb Bush later reappointed him. He served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2006 to 2014, representing his hometown region in the Florida Panhandle. CFO Patronis is recognized for outstanding leadership in the hometown of Panama City and throughout Florida. He is committed to active civic engagement and business development and serves on numerous boards throughout the state. He's also a partner in the family-owned seafood business, Captain Anderson's, that will celebrate its 50th anniversary this year, so congratulations. So with that, we would like to go ahead and introduce our special guest.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here with you today. I've got to brag a little bit about how fantastic of a legislative delegation you've got here representing Manatee County. I know some of them will have to step out early because of a delegation meeting today, and if more of you step out early because of that, I understand it. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. You don't get a Senate President designee often in your backyard. Bill Galvano, I had a fortune of serving 4 years with him in the House, and was a mentor to me. Love the guy, and you're going to be served well by having somebody as one of the single biggest decision makers in our state right from your own backyard. Then you got guys like Jim Boyd, who I don't know what you do with him. He's you're right. But you know, Jim and I served for 4 years together in the House, 4 years together in the House. And there's nobody who is more disarming to the process who can take an uncomfortable situation, a tense situation, who has got the hide this guy has. There's no greater friend to any member of the process than Jim Boyd. Really, I'm not going to look at him because I get emotional because that's the type of you elect good people. You really do. And then you got Mike Bennett. We're so glad you have him here. So I got to share. So you got to understand when you got the Senate and the House. In the Senate, one senator is worth a dozen House members. They really are. There's not often that a House member can really champion an effort or an issue unless you've got a senator who's willing to stick by you on it. Because, you know, a House member, we run 6 bills. That's all we'll run in a year. You know, a senator can run, 20, 30 bills at one time. So they've got a lot of balls in the air, And, I remember part of my favorite piece of legislation I ever ran was with Mike Bennett, because the guy is just so solid, and I understand why you wanted to keep him in public service, just because, talking about a wingman and he could be, the way we looked at Mike a lot of times, and I'm sure the way you do, he's a real son of a gun, but he's our son of a gun. And you need somebody like that can throw elbows and stand their ground and take a hit, and that's what you've got. Ron Reagan, what a mess. Where's he at today? Y'all make sure you let Ron know I asked about him. And Greg Stubbe and Nancy Dieter, y'all have had such a fantastic, Doug Holder, such a fantastic delegation coming out here over the years. You're really fortunate. They represent you very well. And they make a lot of friends in the process, which really helps getting the agenda that's important to Manatee County and the great areas around here accomplished and passed. And they do it and win friends at the same time. So that's all. I'm doing overkill about spending a lot more time talking about politicians. Thank you. I haven't met you yet. I just met your aide, though. Thanks for being here. Anyway, so and then you got the patriarchs of the group, like Senator Pat Neal. Thank you for being here today, Senator. But Senator Neal was there at a different time. It probably wasn't as popular to be a Republican, but it was nice for somebody at least that carries a conservative agenda to be one of the trailblazers and the front runners of the policies that we are now being able to stand and fight for in Tallahassee. But it wouldn't ever happen if you didn't have those guys that were willing to take the hits early on, like Senator Neal, in order to be an outspoken advocate for good conservative business policies. A little bit about myself. I did the chamber route. I did a couple terms on the Panama City Beach Chamber of Commerce up in Northwest Florida, and it's fun. It's fun. You get to meet. I had those that said, "Oh man, it's the Chamber of Commerce. You won't win being affiliated with the Chamber of Commerce when I ran for the legislature." And I'm sorry, the chamber became part of my family. I was a guy who was in a business with my brothers, and I signed the front side of a paycheck. And the chamber was made up of folks that were like-minded, that understood how to manage people, run a business, understand a P&L, and how to turn a profit. So whether or not you're a demographic that's important, at the same time, the Chamber of Commerce is where I felt comfortable earning my skills in order to try to be a business leader in the community. And it's one of those things you get out of it what you're willing to put into it. And I tell folks that get involved with the chamber, I said if you pay your membership dues and don't engage, then you're not making good use of your monies. Pay your membership dues and then get involved, network, meet the players that are there, and your business will prosper. It is. It's a simple equation that works. And then I got involved with the legislature. 8 years. I got a great wife, 2 little boys, and my wife is making sacrifices to allow me to be here. But thank goodness that she's a realtor, so she sells real estate for a living. With her and her mother, they have a little Century 21 office, and it's great having a family where both households work, and we understand the challenges of managing people. So let me tell you what we're going to show you today. We have got a fantastic state economy. We really do. The storms, I toured around with Chief last month, and we went. It was kind of funny as I'm touring your county. I don't realize how much agriculture you have here. You've got a diverse economy here, and with all the players that come into play here, you've got a fantastic airport. When we relocated our airport in Northwest Florida, look at the economy we went from an airport we decommissioned that had 250,000 employments. The new one we opened up the first year was 900,000 employments, and it was the Southwest effect. Southwest Airlines came in on the day one. But with what you've got here, and I'm kind of thinking, well, does Sarasota have a market that can grow when you're in the shadows of such a big airport like Tampa? And you really have. You've been able to work together to bring in the JetBlues and the Deltas and those players to expanded markets. And it's great to have a viable airport. And it's a great location for everything what you're doing here. So I'm envious. We built a new airport. It's doing great. It's 25 miles out of town. But the vision was to hopefully build around it down the road. But to get back to our state's finances, so it's we've got a state that yes, it is going to probably take a little bit of a hit because of sales. We are a sales tax state. We are a dock stamp state. But we are going to take a little bit of a hit because of Hurricane Irma. We hit 60 million tourists last year. Up into the 6 months, sorry, we hit 60 million tourists as of first week of July this year. We were on the track to hit 120. You're going to have a little bit of a pause because of the storm. And yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't point out. Who knows Pete Norden? Do y'all know Pete Norden yet? I got to call Pete out. So, Pete, I only had like 3 jobs in my life. I always worked at the restaurant, but like my second job I ever got is I was a co-host on a radio show in the morning with Pete Norden in Panama City, and he was our station manager, and paid me a whopping $7 an hour to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and do drive time radio. And if you've never done it, it is the greatest social science experience you'll ever meet, because you will then walk out and you will meet people at Walmart or getting gas, and they will talk to you like they've known you their entire lives because of that routine you build with the morning radio show. So anyway, I'm sorry, I forgot about it. I needed to call Pete up because I asked him to come show up this morning to give me some comfort. So anyway, as I was telling you, our state sales tax will take a little bit of a hit because of this, but Amy Baker, who's our state's economist, pointed out that Hurricane Irma will fall somewhere in between Hurricane Andrew's $46 billion in economic losses and Wilma's $25 billion. There's no two ways about it. It could be the costliest storm. Irma could be the costliest storm in the history of the state. But as we continue to calculate, we have over 700,000 claims filed in the state. Some of the challenges that are there is those that were affected by flood damage. Some 80% of those in the state had no flood insurance. These will be challenges of whatever final package Congress ends up ultimately embracing to try to, and what we're advocating for, and is what Governor Scott's been advocating for, with a good relationship with the White House, is Florida is an incredible donor state to the federal system, whether it be in sales tax and premiums to flood insurance. We do need to be made whole. So as we're advocating, as we're working with our congressional delegation, those are still details yet to be determined. But as we are still hoping to, like I said, I touched on earlier, hoping to hit the 120 million tourists. It'll be a little bit more of a challenge because of the storm, but the storm knocked us back. But we're back at it. The storm had a dramatic effect of over 40 counties in the state. The morning of the storm, leaving the edge of Tallahassee, myself and a couple of our guys, we drove south. And we stopped in Manatee, like I said, here with the chief, and made the rounds. We stopped in Tampa, Lee County. Lee County was really hit hard. And then made it back up to Orlando and Duval. And then the following Sunday hit the Keys. The Keys it's pretty sad. The challenges they'll have recovering, especially in the two islands that with Cujo Key and Big Pine Key, which were hit the hardest. A lot of it was workforce housing. So that will have a pretty challenging effect on how the Keys does make their recovery. But as one of the plans you'll probably see FEMA roll out was the same way they did with Hurricane Sandy is, Jim Boyd's house had some damage. Right when Jim's about to take a picture, I start talking about him. So Jim Boyd's house has roof damage, okay? So Jim is entitled to $30,000+ in living expense money. How about, Jim, how much is it going to cost $10,000 to fix your roof? We have an adjuster come out. It's much easier instead of giving Jim $30,000 in living expenses that he's entitled to, not even by having FEMA flood insurance, but that's just part of the flood, the FEMA response. We just get his roof fixed. So then we get him back into his house. So what you'll see probably a program come out where contractors will be part of the equation to help people get back in their existing residences if the damage is repairable, as opposed to trying to make you whole or provide you $30,000 worth of living expenses in temporary housing until you get back up on your feet. That was one of the ways, like I said, the recovery of Superstorm Sandy was. So we'll go to our first slide, and we're going to look at our state's real GDP. So now this is a 30,000-foot view. Now, as the slides, you're going to see there'll be a consistent theme through all of this, and Mike Bennett will be probably a little more in tune from a legislative side of what we saw, because he was definitely there at some of the worst times we had in the legislature with our economy recovering after the real estate bust. So as the lead up of the recession, the economy was growing at a healthy pace, and you can see that at the very beginning of the chart, the growth stalls between 2006 and 2007 before turning into a rapid decline. And at the height of the pre-recession, our GDP grew to $799 billion, okay? So then once it bopped out, the GDP fell by almost 10% to $721 billion. It's been growing fairly steady ever since, as you can see, and now it's well above the pre-recession levels. In 2016, our GDP was $815 billion. It's a tremendous number. But there's this magical effect that says once you break the trillion GDP, once you break it, your economy changes dramatically, and that's what you've seen with a California. You see it in New York. So there's a different type of game changer effect that industry considers your state once it hits that threshold. And in 2016 was the first time that GDP was higher than the pre-recession peak. Let's go to the next slide. So our unemployment rate and labor rate. So you'll see the two lines on here. The blue line represents the state's unemployment rate. The red line represents the number of people in the state's labor force. And you'll see that on the axis on the right. So just like GDP, it has grown rapidly the lead up to the recession, and then the slide took place. By the spring of 2006, rolled around, unemployment was down to 3.1%. Everybody remember the real estate boom. You imagine, you that were fighting out there for finding able-bodied employees, it was a challenge. So now that's the lowest the rate has ever been recorded that year since we were tracking it since 1976. Now, as a small business owner, I remember the challenges I had finding employees to work in my restaurant. We had 200+ employees, and it is what it is. It became a market where the market was able to dictate the wages that you were willing to pay, because you had to have bodies in place. So, when I needed to hire somebody, it was difficult. We were working from all over the place to try to bring personnel in, and it was especially, you saw in the construction trades. I remember being over in South Walton County and seeing busloads of folks really getting just trucked in from Texas and other markets, because we were where the jobs were and an extraordinary pay rate. So in our market, we went from 3,000. We had a lot of mom and pop hotels along Panama City Beach. We went from 3,000 bedroom units to 18,000. So you can imagine the amount of foreclosures we had in our market from that whole transition, the settling effect that had, and as we had inventory that now had to become managed. Our bed tax now collections in Bay County have steadily grown. Well, all that vacation homes, all those 18,000 units, it became where, I really don't want to manage my own property. I'm going to turn it over to a management company. And in turn, your TDCs and the state sales tax and all have had this steady increase, because the inventory is getting managed by people who know taxes have to be paid. So it is what it is. It is what it is. In our case, so I'm a lot of times I tell folks, they say, well, where are you from? I'm out of state. And I don't know if you've picked up on it, but I sound like I'm more like from Alabama than I am Florida. And folks would say, well, where are you from? I said, I'm from Panama City. Oh, is that near Orlando? I said, no, it's near L.A. And then they'd look at you, L.A. I said, Lower Alabama. And people would then understand, but because so many of our vacation homes are owned by folks from Alabama and Georgia, well, I don't have to, if I rent it out, I don't have to pay sales tax. I don't have to pay bed tax. What's bed tax? So as we have seen those folks move, like I said, move their properties into property management companies, those numbers have gotten better. So now if you look at once the state economy started to decline at the recession, at the height in 2009, we had an unemployment rate of over 11%, okay? 2009 was a tough year. It was a tough year. The challenges are, and as you'll see later on, some of the challenges we had legislatively, balancing the budget, which we did, but balancing the budget and providing services was probably one of the toughest legislative sessions we had to deal with. And that 2009 unemployment rate was the highest ever recorded in the state of Florida's history. But this recession caused challenges for the state's labor force and participation. People lost the interest to look for work too. Okay, which compounded the situation. The labor force grew even though unemployment rates started to climb, reaching 9.2 million in 2018. At that point, Floridians, like I said, gave up looking for work, and after long periods of unemployment, the labor force began to decline from that 9.1 million in 2009. At the same time, unemployment started to fall. So as soon as people started to see the unemployment rate starting to fall, they started to get hope they could find a job. That created the interest for folks to get re-engaged and look at the job market. But it was at that window, there was a tremendous strain on the state budget because of the amount of services the state was paying without a growing stimulus back to the economy. There was no transactions taking place, no sales tax. We had lost a lot of revenue, and there wasn't the real estate closings that were happening. We had an economy that was a rocket, and what comes up comes down, and you'll see as we continue a settling effect that we're in right now. So anyway, Governor Scott came along in 2009. It was a steady hand that we needed to help start to righten the ship, give us some comfort, and challenged a lot of the status quo of how our state did business. And it helps when you've got a governor who's willing to take a hit, and that's what he did. After the hard work of Governor Scott, the legislature at that time, we've seen our unemployment rate drop to the level it is at 4.1%. Let's go to the next slide. So now building permits and medium home sale prices. This one's interesting. So this again is going to show the spike, the low, and the settling out. So in 2005, there was 26,000 building permits issued in the state of Florida. That's a crazy amount of numbers, but that was just a phenomenal, just thirst for getting out and constructing. And you think about every time we build a building, the sales tax, all the goods that are being paid, and then all the contractors on top of that, they've got to be paid. Their subs got to be paid. Well, those subs have to buy school clothes, milk, cheese, televisions, clothes, everything that goes along with it. And our state is getting commission every step of the way. Fantastic economy that was unsustainable, okay? It was. We went from 26,000 building permits in 2005, and you'll see as it drops down, the average home price got to almost $260,000 at that time. In 2006 is when the peak was, and then by April 2009, building permits dropped by over 92%. We went from 26,000 to 2,200, almost 2,300 building permits. It was a grinding halt to the construction industry, grinding halt. We saw that decline for a couple more years, and the housing price went from 260 to 122. So and look, for those of you that were buying homes at the time, some of you got upside down. It happened. There was incredible pains to those that bought a home at the peak of the market, and then as you had those individuals that were locked into a house by Save Our Homes. They were stuck in their house. They couldn't move. I want to prosper. I want to spend money. I want to build a new house. But I was in a house that was locked in because of a tax structure that wouldn't let me move because I would be punished because of the assessed values. So we needed the correction, and that's it's been painful, but you'll see as we continue, it'll settle out. Now the market has stabilized. 260 per house, 122 per house. Now we're at the average house price in the state of Florida is $240,000. And building permits aren't to where they were pre-recession, but now they're at 11,000 permits. That's what we did last year, 11,000 permits, which is reasonable. It's predictable. It's stable. So let's go and let's go ahead to the next slide. All right, so state revenue, and this is a little complicated. All right, there's different colors here, but I'm going to explain every one of them to you. So the blue bars at the bottom, okay, that's going to be our general revenue. Okay, the red bars, the next one up, that's going to be our trust fund dollars, and you know, and this. After my first session, I thought, man, I could get my hands on state revenues. How does our state cash flow? And I spent the summer. I went up several times during the summer, sat down with our budget chief just to sit down and understand the complexity of this, because you got 8 years in the legislature and you're term limited out. If you're not trying to put some extra time in it, not all of us are as smart as Jim Boyd to know this on day one. But you spend some time in it so you can relate it back to my own business, okay? The green bar that you have right here represents money transferred from, collected by the state on behalf of the local governments, okay, and transferred back to them. And the purple bar represents the money received by the state from federal or local governments. So, and I'll give it a little bit more explanation. So the blue line represents state taxes and fees per capita in real dollars. Per capita, so per individual. So now, prior to the state's recession in 2005-06, our state revenues peaked at $66 billion. Again, let's think about what was going on that time. Real estate boom. Okay, there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in the country. So, as again, getting back to that little 7% in some places, 6.5% in some commission that was being collected around the state. That's what was spiking in addition with dock stamps. Now, after that, revenues fell for 3 consecutive years, reaching a low of $61 billion. That's almost an 8% drop in business that the state was having. All right. At the same time, state taxes and fees per capita grew. You can imagine, because we're getting less money in, but our services still have to be maintained, okay? So it grew. Our debt per capita was $2,800 in 05-06, and it went to $2,160 in fiscal year 08-09. Now, after the revenues began to rise again, as you can see, the steady growth, primarily driven by a large influx of cash by the stimulus. Remember the stimulus that took place under the federal administration? That artificially grew our state's revenue some. Now, but revenues continue to steadily rise until the levels right now where we're at $84.4 billion. Now, state taxes and fees per capita, however, have not continued to grow. That's due to the tax cuts that the legislature has been able to implement and put in place. So for this fiscal year, we're at about $2,412 per capita. That's about 16% below our peak. And that's just, again, thanks to the legislature and the governor for cutting taxes and fees. That's since 2011, we've cut $3.4 billion in taxes. Thank you, guys. $3.4 billion in taxes. So now let's just drill down to where our revenues are coming from. Let's go to the next slide. So these are our tax revenues. So now this is our sales tax, corporate income tax, and our dock stamps. We talked about those, and dock stamps, you know, from real estate sales. So the red line represents the corporate income tax. The green line represents dock stamps. Remember the trend? Nobody's buying houses. No permits, okay? And then the green line, the green line represents dock stamps that can see on the right. Now, while it doesn't look like it's automatically chart, you can see that the numbers for sales tax and use tax are about 10 times higher than the others, okay? So sales tax and corporate income tax grew in the years leading up to the recession, okay? That makes sense. Dock stamps started to fall earlier. The dock stamps are mostly collected, of course, when we buy and sell real estate. The dock stamps growth had this is just astonishing run. But prior to the recession, sales tax peaked at $19.4 billion. Okay, that was in 06, 07, again, right before the collapse. Corporate income tax peaked at that same time, $2.4 billion. People were making money. All right, doc stamps peaked 2 years earlier at $1.6 billion. All three, of course, fell quickly. Didn't start to recover until 09, 010. Now, sales tax fell 18% to $16 billion. Corporate income tax fell 33% to $1.6 billion. And doc stamps fell 92% to $130 million. 92% switch. But anyway, but you can see as it's starting to stabilize, it's all started to grow. Doc stamps have recovered from $130 million to last year $782 million. Okay, huge shift. Corporate income tax reached $2.2 billion below its peak. So both doc stamps, corporate income tax have leveled off, as you can see. And now let's look at our state spending. Next slide. State spending again. So blue bars represents education spending. Red bars, Health and Human Services, that's Medicaid, Department of Health. Green bars represent all those state spending, law enforcement, corrections, transportation. So anyway, interesting comes when you look at the individual categories of spending. So education spending reached its pre-recession peak in 07, 08, okay, the peak at $23.7 billion after declining to 19.7 in 11, 12, okay, the bar got shrunk. Now it's at the highest level ever at $24.9 billion. Other spending followed similar patterns. $27 billion fiscal year before falling to $19.2 billion 09, 010. That's again law enforcement, corrections, road strict. Now it's currently back up to $24.1 billion. Now here's what's really interesting. It's hard to punish healthcare. It is what it is. It's a politically tough message to be tough on healthcare spending. It is what it is. We all have concerns about it, whether it be seniors, whether it be children, all those parts. So that was a tough issue to try to change. That only in that whole entire period of all those challenging years, it only had one cut, and that was a $500 million in 1 year. Ever since, healthcare budgets continue to grow. This is why we went out and started championing putting a managed care system in place for our Medicare population. We had to have predictability. We had to be able to manage because we couldn't allow our healthcare budget to consume every resource in the state because it was on the path that was doing. So we had to put some checks and balances in. Sometimes hospitals and providers aren't thrilled about a managed care environment, but we had to manage expectations of the taxpayers, and we couldn't come back every single year and hit them with a 20% increase in the cost of health care because that was the path of what we were on. So let's go to the next slide. So this is total debt outstanding. Debt's not a bad thing. But what has happened since really, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Governor Scott. Since Governor Scott's been in place, debt has shrunk in the state. Matter of fact, there's been no governor since Bob Martinez that has paid down as much debt as Governor Scott. He again, different approach, comes at it from being a business sector guy that paying down state debt is part of one of his issues. And giving credit to credit's due, Governor Bush was a strong advocate for a solid credit rating for the state. My office, we have governance also with the SBA. So we manage what we take to market. We take all our own bonds to market. Okay. Last month we took to market $300 million in right-of-way bonds. Bank of America bought them. All right. So as we took those right-of-way bonds, we were able to get from the market at a rate at 3.2%. I was looking at this little Bloomberg terminals. Anybody familiar with the Bloomberg terminal systems? Those things are like $11,000 a year. And there's no negotiating. We've got one for the whole entire state. We don't need any more than that. But so afterwards, after we took our bonds to market, I'm sitting there playing with the Bloomberg terminal and looking at what Illinois and what New Jersey are taking their bonds to market at the same time, paying sometimes 2.5 points more because of how upside down they are financially. No reserves, a solvent retirement system that's not solvent. And you know what? You can't blame the investors for saying, you know what, you're going to have challenges paying me back. But because of the fiscal integrity that we've got in the stability of our economy in Florida, we are able to be nimble. We can pivot. we take advantage of deals that other states can't. So, as I'm now going to get back to our chart here, I kind of spoke ahead, but the red line represents our debt per capita. You can see how it spiked and how it's dropped, okay, in the red line. Now, and we've done, again, a good job of managing our debt. The debt peaked in 2010 to $28 billion, all right? The governor and legislature, they've been making a lot of efforts. The governor, there was a point where, and God love our ability to write bonds and grow our economy and stimulate construction, but bonds would come to the governor, and typically the governor and the cabinet have to sign off on all those new lending authorities, all those new bonds to be issued. The governor started, there was a new dorm that was going to be built at one of our state universities. Governor questioned, where's the utilization of all the other dorms there? Well, they didn't have that report. He started just pinging them. He was treating it like an individual coming to his bank to borrow money. And he started challenging back, and we changed legislative policy, Buzz. We forced a business model to be developed in that home loan application. You're going to go buy a home. You know, you've done this. All right, show me three months worth of pay stubs. Show me your bank statements. And show me why. How you're going to have the means to pay for this. That's the same thing we did back to our universities. As we put those challenges back on them, a little bit of that construction slowed down, but a lot more thought went into it, and ensuring efficiency and building utilization was maximized. We had an environment where our bonds were being issued because we were forcing college freshmen to live on campus. We were saying, if you're a college freshman, you're going to go to Florida State, you have no choice but to live on campus. Well, that's pretty good predictability of cash flow if you're building a brand new dorm. And the governor said, no, we're not going to build an environment where you're going to put a gun to the head of the student saying they have to live on campus. Not every student is going to be forced to live on campus. Maybe they live in Tallahassee and don't need to live on campus because they're going to Florida State. So it was nice to have real life conditions for the real test of the merits of the applications of expanding these bonds. So again, I think we may have been a little bit of a frustration to some of that expansion and growth, but it was being a watchdog over your dollars is what it was. So as we have been retiring debt, like I spoke to, the most since Bob Martinez, now we're at $24.1 billion. Knock 'em dead, guys. Thank y'all for being here. So debt per capita has also recently decreased. Our debt per capita peaked at 2011 at $1,200. All right. Now it's down to last year it was down to $1,085. This year it'll be lower. It'll be lower. Just the trend is being there. But as you compare us to our peer group, this is going to surprise you. So again, $1,085 per person debt in the state of Florida. If you compare us to the 11 other largest states, we're number one in the 11 other largest states are at $1,600 debt per capita. Okay, over $500 difference. But when you compare us to the debt per capita of Illinois, every citizen in Illinois owes essentially $2,500 debt. You go to New Jersey, it's a staggering $4,100. They'll never survive. They'll never get out of the debt they're in. $4,100 per person in the state of New Jersey would have to write a check in order to make the state solvent. Anyway, we've done a good job. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is our bond refinancing. This is real nerdy, but I love this stuff. Bond refinancing this is refinancing your home. It's taking advantage of good interest rates right now, and it's changing. Look, back in January, your radio ads you would hear on Pete's radio station were talking about refinance at 3.75%. Now those same radio spots are talking 4.25%. Okay, so this is the same thing. We had cabinet this week, and I challenged our SBA guy. I said, what do we have available still to take in the market to take advantage of these terms? So we've got stuff that's being called. I said, are we getting phone calls, or do we have to go seek them? And it's kind of one of those things. If you're the guy holding the note, and I'm getting 6%, I hope you forget about me. I hope you don't even call me because I like your 6% money. All right. Because if you're giving me 6%, that's a fantastic rate of return. We're proactively refinancing all that. We took a bond to refinance the other day. One single note we refinanced saved us $30 million in interest, and $28 million in principal. That's real money. That's real money that's going back into transportation, healthcare, education, and it's not coming out of your pockets. So as you can see, these changes, as having those savings of $99 million to $619 million over the life of these bonds, the total savings of activity between 2011, okay, to 2017 is just under savings $2.6 billion. And that all goes back to our fiscal health. So now let's go back and let's go to the next slide, general fund reserves. Now this is critical to it. So think about it. You're going to apply for that loan again. If you've got a real healthy bank account, you're a stable person for that bank to lend money to. So remember what I talked about with recession. Here's our reserves at an all-time low right there. We were trying to provide state services. You remember this. We were trying to provide state services. So we got into our reserves to the tune of about $900 million. And then you can see it's steadily grown. Now what happens? Again, we're a good customer. We keep a lot of money in your bank, all right? And as we're able to leverage that fiscal stewardship and having a healthy savings account, we're a good place to do business. We're a good place to do business. Ultimately, though, we had a high right here. Now, in 06, you were there in 06, Mike. In 06, the legislature actually contemplated, again, remember, historic sales tax, historic dock stamps, an economy that we were swimming in money, all right? The legislature actually contemplated sending back a $50 check to every single homesteaded property in the state of Florida. They felt like, you know what, we've got historic reserves, we've built service. Now, what was a good thing about it is back then when, and Mike was there, this was before my time, what the state did do, which was smart, they didn't grow programs, but they invested in large single-ticket items, new roads, new bridges, things that basically did not require a tremendous amount of recurring money in order to cash flow them. So thank God that they kept that type of balance, because as you remember, I've told you the trend we've seen, we were eating into that as opposed to raising taxes. Thank goodness we had such a healthy nest egg at that point to help us recover and bounce back. Let's go to the next slide. So, income and outlays. Now, again, sorry, this is a little complicated, but this is the red lines of what I'll explain, and a lot of this changed because of policies in 2010. I hope you're learning something about the state, because I eat this stuff up. I wake up every morning, this is the best job you could have. I tell people, I say, I'm the business manager for the state. I make sure the trains run on time. I write every paycheck. I pay all the bills. We take all our invoices. We put them online so you can go read them. It's a little nerdy, but I really, I've got a great team. So this is talking about our state retirement system. And our state retirement, are there members of, I know we've probably got a couple members of the FRS retirement system here. Did you serve that long to get state retirement? So, well, you've got a good system in place. And what happened in 2010, we had pretty much dramatic change in our policies. The state of Florida's retirement system was the only retirement system left in the United States that had no employee contribution. All of you here that have a retirement system more likely probably a 401k. The state of Florida does have a 401k. But what happened here, we also had a program in place called DROP. Okay? DROP is a program that if I'm an engineer working for DOT, I'm probably very attractive to the private sector. Okay? Because I've got maybe 10, 15 years of knowledge of understanding where the bodies are buried at DOT. So you could see where an Atkins or a former PBS&J or an engineering firm would find me an attractive member of their team. I'm a good hunting guide to help them. So then what was taken, we put DROP in place, and DROP said, if you'll stay with us the full term of 30 years, then we're going to give you this payout that will be a deferred retirement payment of paying you a compounded amount of 6%. So what we did in 2010, dramatic changes. We required state employees, every member of FRS, because that's county employees too, to put 3% of their pay into their retirement, okay? But then we changed that drop compounding amount from 6% to 1%. So you had a mass exodus of members of FRS that have punched out, and that's why this red bar is growing, because this is the employees that were eligible that said, you know what, I'm going to take it while the getting's good. And that's what's happened there with our payout. What here, the purple bar that you see is solvency of our retirement plan. Every year the legislature would write a check to ensure our state retirement was fully solvent, okay? So up here we're writing a check and we're above, if everybody in the state decided to cash out, we could pay 100% of everybody what they're entitled to. So had challenges in the market here, tough turn down the economy, and we're still sitting at about 86 to 88% solvency. So basically, if every single person in the state decided to retire, that was eligible to retire, they get about 88% of what they're entitled to, okay? So what happens is what the legislature has done is we'll write a check every year to keep it balanced, so we don't get in the environment of a New Jersey. New Jersey, here I'll just compare us to some of our others. Florida has the 10th best fund in the state in solvency, okay? That solvency, if you compare us to other large states like Texas, they're ranked 21. California's ranked 24. New Jersey, 48th in the nation. Illinois is 49th, and that's in Illinois, only 41% of their state. That gets back to the debt per capita. 41% of their state retirement is funded. So at some day there's going to be a day of reckoning. It's not going to be here. All right, I'm getting the hook. So I'm going to stop there because all I'm going to do is keep on telling you great things about our state. I think most of you already know that. You wouldn't live here if you knew you didn't have a great state. I will just leave it open for one. Are there any questions I can answer? Anything on your mind? I'm not going anywhere soon. I'll make sure that I'm here to catch you. I know you all have a busy day ahead of you. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way to regulate that?
So she asked me about increasing of insurance rates after the storm. Here's some of the reality of it. The last major storm we had, you had Hermine and Matthew last year. They had some effect, but not like the effect that Irma could have had if it went on its original path. If Irma had gone on its original path going through Dade, Palm Beach, Broward counties, it would be a significant hit to the fiscal health of our insurance industry. We've had a number of years of prosperity in the state, in that industry, and the best way to explain it to you, in 2010, we all own an insurance company. Did you know that? We all own Citizens Insurance, okay? Citizens Insurance in 2010 had almost 1.1 million policies in it, okay? Now Citizens Insurance is to about 460,000. Why? Because private carriers have come in and have started to take out those Citizens policies. This is a good thing. This is less liability for everybody in the room. So because of that, we have got eager investors that have come in, expanded their insurance footprint, and we have diversified the liability across the board. So the good thing about that is you've got a lot of players that have skin in the game, have money in the market to protect it. The bad thing is that 40 counties were affected by Irma. And then you might as well say once Nate came through, Northwest Florida didn't really have any significant damage, but every county in the state was almost touched by one way, shape, or form. Do I think the carriers will come in for a rate adjustment? Possibly. So we've got an insurance commissioner. He does the rate setting for the state. I have not seen any significant clamoring from the insurance industry saying that we were hurt by the storm or that we're fiscally unstable. But I think it's yet to be determined how. We're looking at potentially, I think right now documented about $4+ billion in damages associated to Irma. It just depends on what that number is at the end of the day and how much the payouts are going to be. That won't be determined overnight. But that's a great question. I wanted to tell you about Citizens. Tell people to get, we want people out of Citizens. We want people in the private sector. I don't like the state running an insurance company, but it is what it is. We have to have coverage for our citizens. Yes, sir.
What do you think is going to happen with workers' comp this year?
Great question. So workers' comp, my office also, we do all workers' comp compliance for the state. Our guys are out in the field making sure that we have above board contractors, above board subs that have coverage for their employees. When we have coverage for their employees, that leads to an environment where hospital bills are being paid. And sometimes it's not fun being the bad guy, asking people for their papers, because that's what we do. We come in and ask for papers. But it's the right thing to do because it protects our state, it protects our businesses, and it keeps a level playing field. Workers' comp rates actually saw a drop, okay? In 2003, there was a pretty significant legislative package passed by Representative Don Brown that created a workers' comp environment that put us in historical low rates that we've had really ever since then. Supreme Court had a ruling throughout the findings of the 2003 law that was passed, which in 2003, because so many years of low workers' comp rate, there wasn't a growing industry of a plaintiff's bar environment to sue the insurance companies on behalf of the employees' benefits. The fear is with that ruling changing the terms of how workers' comp rates will be affected by potentially a growing lawsuit, litigious environment we could enter into, that could ultimately change rates. The legislature is contemplating it, but in 2003, when the law was passed to create this low rate environment we did, it was a bill that was filed basically on a weekend, and the committees met at 9 in the morning on a Monday. There was a lot of strategy that went into how we moved the bill out of the committee process to get there, because there's a lot of folks that did not want to change the workers' comp environment in 2003 because it was cash flowing a lot of law firms. That environment has been prosperous over the last several years because of that change in law. The legislature will need to do something. Otherwise, I'm fearful we will end back into an environment where we'll have double-digit growth in workers' comp premiums. And it's this is why you engage your legislators. I'll leave you with this. Whenever any of you come to Tallahassee to meet with a Jim Boyd or a Bill Galvano or a Greg Stubbe, they will throw out who's in their office to meet with you, their constituent. You remember that. You know, you get first priority over anybody that comes into our office. If we're meeting with an advocacy group, we're meeting with a lobbyist, who have you, there's nobody more important than who elects us. You can't spend enough time in Tallahassee over the next, I'm going to say 4 years, because you got 2 years as Bill Galvano. Really over the next 2 years, because Bill Galvano will be Senate President. You want to be there this year, and you'll be there the next 2 years. You might as well go ahead and book hotel rooms now for the next 2 years during the legislative session, because you want to get what's important to Manatee County accomplished. You need to be partners with your legislative delegation. They need you telling them what's right for this area, because you've got a historic opportunity. You really do. Thank y'all. I appreciate you for allowing me to join you today.
Well, that was very interesting. So that was, Jimmy, we really appreciate you coming and participating and giving us the information. Again, we'd like to thank our Platinum sponsors, members for the Manatee Chamber. We always want to recognize them, but a special thank you again to the Kaiser University and Mosaic Company. We really appreciate you putting on these events for us and sponsoring them so we can have them. So we also want to recognize Jackie Deleski, our chairman and president. And so we want to welcome her. We want to thank you again for coming out, and have a nice day. Thank you.